Hey guys, so this video is going to cover an overview of how to do an admission and kind of all the steps in that process. And so again, kind of these videos are for the incoming interns or any other residents, and then also the medical students. And so I think that doing the admissions, you can learn quite a bit. I feel like it's one of the most educational parts of this rotation. Kind of one thing that I've seen is sometimes it's hard as a medical student though to kind of jump in and be a part of what's going on, and to kind of learn because sometimes it can be kind of fast paced. So I'm going to kind of talk about throughout this video and some of the other ones, kind of how the med student can kind of jump in and be more of a part of things. Um, and I think some of it is kind of on the residents to kind of make that happen, but then also the medical students can kind of ask to maybe like lead the patient interview or do the physical exam, and to kind of come up with a plan in those types of things. So let's see. So the first kind of what sets off the admission is the ER doctor will call the hospitalist, and then they'll agree to admit the patient, and then you'll get a text message saying like, "Hey, patient in ED 12 has shortness of breath. Go down and start on the admission." So the first step that and just kind of as a caveat too, the different steps in this video, or like some of this is kind of my style, and some of the different steps in here you can do in a different order. Um, but I'm going to give kind of my way of doing this. So the first thing that I do is go to the medication list, and then this is going to be their home med list, and then I print it. And then what this does is, one, it gives you their med list, so with all the doses and everything, so you don't have to write it all down because you have to do a med rec and you have to confirm that the patient takes all these. So you have to ask the patient. So it just kind of saves you that step of writing them down. And then secondly, it gives you a piece of paper to be able to write down the HPI and your assessment and plan. And so I print this off and then I flip the piece of paper over, and then some of this might be overkill of writing down too many things. Just kind of write down whatever you need and then remember the rest. But this is kind of what my sheet looks like. So and I always do it exactly the same so I don't forget things. But I write down the patient, the room number, and then I'll look at the ED note if they've typed it up, and then I'll write down a couple of the major HPI points to confirm later with the patient. And then I look through the chart and then I fill out this as much as I can as far as past medical history, surgical history, smoking, alcohol, drugs. And then if it's pertinent, then I'll put in, or I'll ask the patient maybe other social history things like who do you live with or whatnot. Then family history you have to include in the note, and that's for billing purposes. And then the code status, this part, it has to be a physician who asked this. So or at least who confirms it. So just kind of be aware of that. And then the contact. So a lot of times we'll ask for like if the patient has a contact or like a family contact that to give like daily family updates when they're in the hospital. So we'll get their phone number, their name and number there. I'll write down the ED meds that the ED's given the patient already, if they've given any. And then I'll go through the chart and then I'll write down pertinent vital signs, pertinent labs, imaging, any other tests that the ED ordered. And I think this is important, looking through the chart, like back at previous notes that are relevant or like previous studies, like say they were just admitted 2 weeks ago for a similar thing and they already got like a full cardiac workup, then definitely like read all those notes and be aware of that. Because if they're coming in with like the same complaint, you're not going to just repeat the same tests most likely. So it's important to let the attending know that you've kind of done your reading on the patient, and then that you're not, or kind of how that affects your plan. So maybe they had an echo 2 weeks ago, and then write down what that showed. And then when I'm with the patient, I'll fill this out, and then kind of both before and after seeing the patient. Well, so before seeing the patient, I'll kind of start to think of what my assessment and plan is going to be. And then I'll kind of complete that after I go and see the patient. Let's see. So so yeah, have this, fill this out, and then let me see. Yeah, so then the next step would be going and seeing the patient. And so kind of like I said, as a medical student, try to be as involved as possible and try to work as independently as possible. Like all of this chart review, you can completely do by yourself, obviously. And then for seeing the patient, you can either go down before or after, I guess before would be ideal, but you could see the patient by yourself beforehand. I think everyone would be fine with that. Or you could kind of either lead the patient interview and physical exam or at least kind of do 50-50, so that you're getting kind of real experience. And then let's see, so then you've seen the patient, and then now you need to kind of finish coming up with your assessment and plan before you present the patient to the attending. So complete this section here and fill this out and it can be as many numbers as your problem list is. And I would say to be detailed as well. Some attendings won't really ask for this necessarily, but I would come up with all of the problems exactly as you're going to put them in the note, and then come up with like the actual medication names and then the doses as well. And then this is the DVT prophylaxis. So every patient, you have to either put them on DVT prophylaxis or like document a reason why you're not. And then every patient needs a diet order. I would have those and then present that as part of your plan because that's really important for every patient. And then kind of as you're coming up with this plan, one good resource that a lot of the residents use is the hospitalist handbook. It gives like pretty brief kind of things on how to, like what questions to ask the patient. And a lot of times I'll reference this both before seeing the patient and after. And then it gives like a pretty quick like thing of like, your assessment and plan of what meds for this certain condition you'd use. And then one thing I'd also recommend, I guess, if there's time, and there should be time because this is the whole point of being here on this rotation is to learn, and it would only take 5 minutes or so, but if you're a med student, giving your presentation to the resident that you're working with, and then getting some quick feedback on it. And then, before you present to the attending, I feel like as a med student that when I was able to do that, that really helped me, and I've seen that really help the medical students. So I would highly recommend doing that. Let's see. So I think that's kind of the whole first half of the admission. So then you'll present to the attending and they'll give their recommendations. And then you'll walk away from that basically with a clarified plan. And one thing I've seen is some residents are kind of afraid to ask certain questions. And then they'll go to the senior afterwards and say like, hey, I didn't ask this to the attending, but what do you think like the dose of this med should be? So definitely get all your questions out or answered when you're with the attending, and don't be afraid to ask any question because, it's the patient's life on the line as far as what orders and stuff you're going to put in. So make sure you're not just guessing. Let's see. So then the second half let me pull this up. So the second half of the admission consists of like 4 or 5 different steps. So, and not everyone does it in this order, but the basic order that you have to do it in is first put in your orders and the med rec, and then do the note afterwards. But as far as putting in orders, I'll kind of show my approach to it. So I go here to add, and then let's see. So then we always use an admission order set. It kind of captures all the basic things that go into admitting a patient. So type in HOS. And I do have these saved under one of these folders here too, but type in HOS and then click enter. Actually, let me see. For some reason, that's not coming up. Let me let me see, I might be under a weird encounter that's not pulling up. Let's see. You have to be under an inpatient encounter. Let me see here. Let's see if this works. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, so most of the time you're going to use this, this admission order set, the HOS general admission. Let me show you here. So you type in HOS and press enter. It pulls up kind of almost all of the different admission order sets. You're free to use, and these can be helpful too, because they kind of guide what orders you need to put in. You can use any of these that you want. The ones that you have to use, though, kind of per hospital policy, are these two, and I've saved them as favorites. So the neuro stroke / TIA one, and then also the sepsis and septic shock one, if your patient is septic. And then if you're on nights, then the night doctor, and you can use this one on at any point, but the night doctor likes us using this one for any kind of like NSTEMI or chest pain workup. It's called Cardiac Admission Pathway V2. So I'll use those three, but other than that, I prefer using the general one because I'm more familiar with it. But you can kind of use any of those, and I'm going to make a separate video on how to fill that out. So that's what I do first. Then after that, I put in any additional orders, because this is kind of your basic orders like insulin management, common meds like put in the Tylenol, PRN, and those kind of things. But then let's say it's like a CHF exacerbation and you want to start them on IV Lasix, you want to get an echocardiogram, then all of those orders you put in separately here. And so then you'll send all those orders in. And then the next step is doing the med rec. And you can do it all from this same order page. So you click here and then just click document. Let me move that out of the way. You click document history at the bottom. Probably like half the time the nurse will have done this, but so it's already been done on this one. And then right here, you do the admission med rec or medication reconciliation. I'm going to do a separate video on this. So you fill that out. Let's see. And then, so those are basically all the orders. And then next, go to this, your main home screen here. And then you create your problem list. I'm going to do another video separately on that. Whoops. And then the last part is doing your admission note. There's two ways to kind of do it. You can either do it on this, using this panel, just like we did with the progress notes, or you can just open up a separate note and let me switch this. So it would be called admission history and physical, and then the name of it would be history and physical. So that's kind of all the steps for the admission. So just to kind of summarize the things that I think are important for this is to try to work as autonomously as possible and then try to come up with your plan before, like completely come up with your plan, all the details of it before seeing the attending or before running it past the attending. And I think you can learn a lot. Another thing that I recommend is if you have time, especially if you're if there's med students, is to do like a debrief afterwards and to kind of just review, because a lot of times with the attending, they kind of rush through the kind of talking about everything with you. And I remember when I was a med student, or even last year when I started, it was pretty difficult to capture everything that we're doing and why we're doing it. So really review that with the resident that you're working with, and really, I don't think they would be like offended if you ask them like, hey, why did we do this, or like what's kind of going on with this patient. So that's what I'd recommend.